Hi, good afternoon, everybody. In this video, we're going to look at the 5 best Buffalo Sabres teams to miss the Stanley Cup playoffs. Coming up. All right, let's get on it. I want to get an early start because I want to make a video for the small channel, Rosie's channel, and that takes some time, so I want to get on that. So I'm jumping on these right away while I'm home. Okay, let's get that shout out. Here it comes. And a shout out goes to Derek B. He goes, the best Sabres teams to not make the playoffs. Can you do a video on this? Here you go, Derek. I'm going to give you the 5 that I believe, okay, are the best. I'm going to put them in the order, for me, that stings the most still to this day, for me. That just bugged me still to this day that we didn't make the playoffs. So, let's go to the 03-04 Buffalo Sabres. And here's the standings that year. And if you look there, you see we're in 9th. We just missed the playoffs, right? And what drives me nuts about this, yes, we're 6 full points out, but the Sabres finished that year 25-14-6. Basically, a playoff team that just didn't get in. It drives me crazy. It does. I remember that year, we only finished a few games over 500, 37, 34, 11. I just combined the two brackets, guys, the ties and overtimes, okay, because it's 1 point. So 37, 34, and 11. But we finished 25, 14, and 6 in that season. So we started 12, 18, and 5. And by the time we made our push, it was too late. We just couldn't get winning enough. But then there was the strike, and then there was the 05-06. So that was a sign of things to come, that 25, 14, and 6 finish. That was a sign of things to come with our big 06 team, which would be the next team. Okay. And this one here, guys, I believe, yeah, it's the 08-09 Buffalo Sabres. Here we go. And there we are in 10th, 2 points out of a playoff spot. Just one more win would have done it that year, which drives me crazy. But if you look at the goals for, goals against, that bothers me. Montreal was only a +2 and we were a +16. Montreal was a better home team, but Montreal on the road was not as good as us. We finished strong. We won our last 3. We went 7-2-1. We just couldn't get it done because if you look down the stretch, they won enough as well, which just drove me nuts. But again, a 3-0 finish, and we just didn't get in. Yeah, that one sucked because what I'm going to show you next, really. So let's go into the year before that, the 07-08 Sabres, and they come in at number 3. Here we go. Okay, in that one, we're 4 points out of a playoff spot. The Bruins got that last spot. They were -10 in goals for and against, and we were a +13. So I just thought that the Sabres that year were just a very good team that just didn't get in, and they were getting over the shock of losing Briere and Drury that year. That year we closed the seasons, it's 6-3-1. It's really 7-3-1, the last 11. So we closed out the season 7-3-1. We just couldn't get it done. And this was the first year after we went back-to-back conference finals. So this really stung. This one for me stung because, you know, I wanted the team to survive without Briere and Drury. We had a good team. I mean, obviously, we still had a very good team. And we started bad, but we kind of closed good. So, you know, if they could have just got in that year, who knows? They might have still had the character guys to get it done. Miller was on a roll. Miller was always on a roll, it seemed, late in the year. And if we could have just got in that year, it would have been, I just always want to know what if, you know, but we missed those. We missed 07-08 and we missed 08-09, the 2 years after, the 2 consecutive years after we lost Briere and Drury to free agency. So it sucked. It sucked. Okay, now let me get it up on here. Okay, coming in at number 2 for me, and yes, it bothers me still, is the 73-74 Buffalo Sabres. Here we go. And people say, why would it bug you, that long ago? It bugged me because the year before, the Sabres showed all sorts of promise, won 30 games at home that year, the year before, and looked just amazing, and they looked like a team on the rise. So I had my, even as a kid, I had my hopes up that Buffalo was going to be really good the next year, and this happened. Now, there was a lot of injuries that year, as I recall. I don't have footnotes to back that, but I do remember that. And I remember going on some sort of a West trip where they lost to the Golden Seals, I believe it was, some sort of West trip, and we just never recovered from that point on. But the next year, we were in the Stanley Cup Finals. They were 49 and 16. I mean, they did come of age the next year. But this was, it was a lot of young teams do this, where they show promise, and then there's a step back. It happens. You guys know it. You see it now, even in this day and age. Colorado, before they became champions, they had to do some steps back, and then they finally did it. They finally got it done. And that's kind of what happened here. It was just a one step back. We were a few games under 500. We were 10 points out of a playoff spot, so it wasn't like it went down it's just one of those things. I couldn't believe it was going to happen, that they weren't going to make the playoffs. That's kind of how it was for me back then, as I recall, So yeah, that stung for me. And this, for me, stung the most. Some of you might remember, some of you might not. Here we go, the 1985-86 Buffalo Sabres. And to mention, before I get into this, okay, before I forget, before I do this actually, that the Sabres were 23-10-6 at home that year. We missed the playoffs too. That bugged me. I remember they were good at home again, but terrible on the road again. Okay, let's take a look at this. All right, so that was the 85-86 Buffalo Sabres. Yes, they were dead last in the Adams division that year, but take a look, guys. I mean, really take a good look at how close we were to second place and having home ice in the first round. We were just a few games away. And the Sabres that year, I remember them commenting that year that was one of the best teams to ever miss the playoffs in NHL history, was that Buffalo Sabres team. That Sabres team that year, what drove me nuts about that team is the year before, after Buffalo showed all that promise in that 82-83, in 83-84, Buffalo had a bad start, then they went 19-5-10. So they lost 5 out of 34 games after that bad start the year before. Then they collapsed in the first round. That's what I remember most, is really what happened the year before. Because the year before, we lost that 5 out of 34 game span, okay? And the next thing, they started something like 9-11, and then they lost like 5 out of 34. They went on this streak of ties, I remember. But what I still remember about that is when we went into the playoffs, I really had my hopes up that the Sabres were going to be okay, for sure, I thought. And then we ran into Quebec, and Quebec beat us the first 2 games. We went home, rallied, won the next 2 games. I remember Perreault got a hat trick. I think it was in that season, I'm pretty sure. In one of those games, I think it was game 4, actually, to force a game 5. And then we lost 6-5 in Quebec. I was so taken back by that. And then this happened the next year. The Sabres missing the playoffs. So for me, it really stung, guys. It really stung. I really was expecting the Sabres the following year to be angry and ready, and Bowman have those guys going. And we just couldn't get on track. It was one of those seasons, I recall, that 85-86 season. No matter what we did, we'd find a way to lose 2 or 3 in a row. No matter what we did. It was just that kind of year. It just didn't fall into place for us. And it was kind of the beginning of the end of the Bowman era, actually, that year. I remember the Sabres, after we lost the last game to Montreal, that officially, well, we were officially done. But I remember they went on the ice and they shook hands like they were eliminated in a playoff series. It was weird to see that, but it was in a regular season game that happened. Yeah, the Sabres lined up and shook hands with the Habs after the game. Yeah, so for me, 85-86 kind of stings the most still for this fan, just me personally, because of what happened the year before and losing the first round to Quebec. And I was still hooked on the 82-83 team that showed so much promise. I just thought they were going to win a Stanley Cup. Then 83-84 was kind of disappointing because we lost to Quebec there too. 3 straight, I might add. And then we played them again 2 years later or no, 83, 84, 84, 85. No, we played them again the next year, and they beat us again. And it's like, I just wanted the Sabres just to get going, guys, just to get going back then. And that rebuild for me, it was just as painful as what we've went through here, for me, because there was so much promise attached to it. And, you know, that's why I can go on and on about the rebuild of 83 and how it just never came to fruition. It just, Bowman didn't have enough time. There was pressure to win a Stanley Cup back then in Buffalo, and it just, there was still pressure in the 80s to win a Stanley Cup, and it just never happened. So, all right, that's it for this one. I'm going to jump on a few more, and I got to get on my other video for the other channel after. See you there.